Hello and welcome everyone. Today, as promised, I will explain how to build a theoretically sound performance-assisted backgammon rating system, and how not to. And it won't take 2 hours, because I'm doing only a brief overview, just enough to set the scene for those of you who watched one or more of my previous videos. Links below. You won't get very far if you didn't. The Elo rating system, named after Professor Elo Arpad, rests upon one simple principle: odds. If Alice is a 2-to-1 favorite against Bob in Brochian multi-darts, and Bob is a 3-to-1 favorite against Charles, then Alice is a 6-to-1 favorite against Charles. Let's call it the odds stipulation, TOS for short. Note that transitivity of odds is not an axiom, but a simplifying assumption. In fact, TOS is never precisely true for any A, B, and C in any real game, but it's a great generic approximation which seems to hold in many domains. Under Elo, every player has a rating, a number representing her strength. The higher the number, the stronger the player. But Elo rating is more than a grade. Thanks to TOS, the rating difference between Alice and Bob can be converted into the probability Alice beats Bob in a single game. The Elo system receives a stream of match results and updates the ratings, trying to align them with observed win rates. In a 2 results game, the update is simple. When Alice wins, her rating increases by 1 minus p times k. And when she loses, her rating drops by p times k. Bob gets the inverse, so total Elo is conserved. K is some system-wide constant, usually between 4 and 32. The updates are engineered so that they cancel out at the truth, that is, when the estimated rating difference is equal to the true rating difference. It's easy to see. When the estimate is equal to the actual rating difference, then P is equal to Alice's true win rate. So the increase, on average, is P times 1 minus P times K, while the decrease is 1 minus P times K. Chess, however, has always been a 3 results game, and most classical games between professionals end in a draw. This is handled by replacing P with the expected number of points to win. Say Alice wins 30% of her games, draws 50% and loses 20%. Then she wins, on average, 0.55 points per game. So Alice's rating goes up by 0.45k when she wins, down 0.05k when she draws, and down 0.55k when she loses. Again, you can verify that those, by design, balance out when the wins, draws, and losses come in the rates I specified. This approach is generic. Subtracting the expected value from the actual number of points won always creates updates which point towards the true value. That is, are on average positive when the estimate is too low, and negative when the estimate is too high. Unfortunately, now the rating difference lost its natural interpretation as a probability. And it's not clear how well those ratings, which now reflect expected points won, adhere to the TOS. I guess they do, because they have been used for a long time. Yet I did not come across data, real or simulated, showing it. In addition, modern chess has several formats: classic, rapid, speed, bullet, and each format has subvariants arising from different time settings. So nowadays, chess sites maintain separate ratings for each format. I dwelled a little on chess, because the same concerns crop up in backgammon. Backgammon has many variants, and even the main competitive format, modern backgammon with a doubling cube, is played as matches to 3 points, 5 points, 7 points, etc., up to 25. Each of those, of course, have their own ratings. That is why they exist, to reduce the huge luck factor. And less luck means more skill, and so higher win rates for the stronger player. But all backgammon sites and bodies use a single rating. The first, Fibs, followed the recommendation outlined by Larry Kaufman in his 1991 article and used the square root to balance match length. That is, if Alice is 100 Elo points stronger in a 1-point match, the Elo system assumes she is 173 Elo points stronger in a 3-point match. The implementation is easy. Simply multiply the Elo difference by the square root of 3 in the formula. Kaufman's suggestion was based on general principles and not on theoretical or empirical data, because there weren't any at the time. And that somehow remained the case until I established the B-line earlier this year. Turns out, the square root exaggerates the benefit for the stronger player, and the real curve is logarithmic. The true multiplier for a 3-point match is 1.24, not 173, and it's 2.67 for a 25-point match, not 5. Practically, this means that strong players get stung twice. They spend more time completing longer matches and get less rating points, because the system assumes they should win more than they actually do. Until this is fixed, which might never happen, play shorter matches to bump your rating. On the good news side, my research did confirm something more basic: the multiplier validity. Initially I thought the multiplier might depend on player skill, but happily, it's constant regardless of skill level. The same for Michi and for Muchi. For any away score, be it 3 away 3 away, 4 away 2 away, or 7 away 15 away. So this part of balancing the updates coming from matches of length 1 to 25, that's sorted. The question is, can we use performance rating to further reduce the luck factor? PR is a numerical score computed by an inhumanly strong computer player, measuring how much the player deviates from the bot's play. PR is a direct measure of skill, and so seems an ideal cog in a machine which rates player by skill. But how can we fit it in? Let me count the ways. A. Do something without understanding Elo systems or PR. B. Follow chess. Define an expected value and hope it roughly adheres to the TOS. This too does not require understanding PR. C. Build a mathematical model of PR and use it to define the expected value. Let's tackle those in reverse. What do I mean by a mathematical model? Let's look at the Elo system for win plus PR. It takes 5 inputs: Alice and Bob's current rating, the match length, who won the match, and who had better PR, and outputs the updated ratings. We stay traditional and have the rating difference represent the skill difference in a 1-point match. So first, as before, we compute P of W, the probability Alice wins an M-point match at the current ratings. Then compute E, the expected number of points Alice wins assuming players get 1 point for winning the match and 1 point for playing better. For E, we need to sum the number of points won in every possible outcome, each multiplied by the probability of said outcome. To win 2 points, Alice needs to win the match, P of W, and win the PR provided she won the match. If Alice wins the match but not the PR, P of W times 1 minus winning the PR, she gets 1 point. Similarly, if Bob wins the match, 1 minus P of W, and Alice the PR, Alice also gets 1 point. And finally, Alice gets 0 points if Bob wins both. I put it here for mathematical purity and entertainment, because 0 times anything is 0. Then we proceed as usual. Take the number of points Alice actually won, be it 2, 1 or 0, subtract the expected value and multiply by k. This is a change in Alice's rating. That was, you guessed it, the simple part. The hard but crucial step is to figure out those conditional probabilities. Alice winning the PR when she wins the match and when she doesn't. It took me quite a while, and the margins of YouTube are too small to flesh out the details. But let's take a quick look. It starts with 13 computer players, both heads of various strengths, playing each other a long series of matches. We then collect the PR win rates for each bot head, when he wins and when he loses. Here is one such example from 3-point matches. The vertical line shows the bot rating, about 1570. The blue axis shows his PR win rate when winning the match. The circles when losing. Here it's easy to see the importance of conditioning. Winning the match and winning the PR go hand in hand. They must. The better you play, the more you win, and vice versa. Here are a few more. And the question is, what is the general form? What is the model? After a few false starts, I found they fit a modified sigmoid reasonably well. A 3-parameter sigmoid with a quadratic in the exponent. Now comes another complex step of creating a unified model which will give those two curves for any arbitrary Elo, not just the 13 we have. And here it is. It does not fit the data as well as the individual curves, but it's surprisingly good. And what's crucial is the continuity. A small change in the inputs, the Elo values of the two players, results in a small change in the output. In some sense, it's no different than the TOS. This model is also a kind of simplifying assumption, a center point. Some pairs of players will be above, some below. But as long as it sits in the middle, it will fulfill its role as the core for the win plus PR system. Let's move back to B, the chess-like option. There are 3 possible outcomes. A win for A, where player A wins both match and PR. A win for player B, and a draw, when A and B split the wins. Here the rating difference, after being converted, represents the expected win amount for Alice. So Alice either gets 1, half, or 0 points for a win, draw, or loss, because the number generated by the Elo formula is always between 0 and 1. It's that simple. I will, however, make one small tweak and let players get 2 points for the win and 1 point for the PR, which, after scaling to 0,1, looks like that. Increasing the value of wins brings the rating closer to win-only ratings and help the B line do its job. Time to hop on A, Backgammon Galaxy V2 rating system. V2 was a secret, just like the late V1. But Chris Yep, the data scientist who reverse engineered V1, was keen to have the full set. The formula is too complex to reconstruct just from data points, so Chris put together a 99.99% accurate approximation, 100% perfect for all practical purposes. Here is the essence of V2. And my oh my, it's ugly. Scientifically ugly. A bunch of elements bearing no relation to logic or known theory. Maybe beauty got lost in translation, but I can't see how. First, note that the calculation is always done from the point of view of the higher rated player. This breaks symmetry and gives an advantage to, say, a 1501 player versus a 1500 player. Then, note the absence of a square root or a B-line in the rating to probability conversion. Third, take the correction term C. It's a function of match length and rating difference, but practically very close to being a constant. And what adding a per match length constant to the expected value supposed to do? Then K, which depends on both match length and the player's average rating. I hope the Galaxy team does not think that this m to the power of 06 does the B-line work. It doesn't. And tying K to the rating is just asking for trouble. And finally, having the winner of the match always gain points, even when losing the PR, will probably curb the effectiveness of a PR system. But hey, Functionality doesn't need to be beautiful. Perhaps it all comes together in some strange way. Only direct testing will tell. So test we will. We have the ZR model, so we can generate match results and PR wins for any two players, and also three other systems as reference. EZR, the model-based win plus PR, and sorry about the lame name. CZR, the chess-like system, and Fyro, the vanilla no PR wins only system. And the comparison is based on two-player runs, because the systems are complex enough to require the simplest example possible. Here is one such run, with players rated 1550 and 450, as shown by the dashed green line. One obvious property we can look at is stability, the standard deviation of one player estimated Elo. The lower the deviation, the stabler the estimate. A simple property. But nothing is simple when examining V2. Nothing. First, we need 4 graphs, one for each match length, which is true for any system. But V2 stability is unique in being dependent on player Elo. Each graph contains 4 lines, for Elo differences of 25, 50, 100, and 200, centered around the Elo value shown on the x-axis. So this point, at x equals 1300, tells us that the estimated Elo value for two players with 1200 and 1400 Elo playing 5-point matches will have a standard deviation of 85, around 40% of the difference. Very high values in my opinion. And everyone suffers. But lower rated players suffer more. And that high value Elo dependent K is almost certainly the culprit. The other three, EZR, CZR, and Fyro, have constant deviation per match length. Here is Fyro, and I'm showing the value for 3 different Ks, 8, 12, and 16. This is CZR, and finally EZR, with Ks 4, 6, and 8. I'm showing 3 values because we hit a somewhat tricky point. Which K should we use for each system? Lower Ks increase stability and lower the bias, but they also reduce responsiveness. Players get stronger and weaker over time, and Elo systems need to track those changes. I'm not sure what's the best way to measure responsiveness, so here is a way. Start the 2 players in the middle and measure how long it takes to reach the mean Elo value. Overshooting the mean is a sure sign the system reached steady state. Note that the mean value might be the true rating when the system matches the model, as for EZR and Fyro, or not, as for CZR and V2. We don't expect a mismatched system to be correct. We just want to know how long it took to settle. So here are the results for V2. Same deal as before. 4 graphs, one for each match length, and 5 different rating differences between the players. Again, we see the effect of K. Higher rated players are graced with lower Ks, so longer settling times. And yet again, non-galaxy systems have constant settling time. Here is what I call the conservative values for Fyro, CZR, and EZR, values resulting, on the whole, with comparable settling times to those of V2. K equals 16 for Fyro and CZR, and K equals 6 for EZR. And what I call reasonable values. K equals 10 for Fyro and CZR, and 4 for EZR. Values reasonable for a backgammon rating system, in my opinion. I'm putting the charts here so you can pause and form your own opinion, if you want. The choice of K affects the main dish, consistency. The estimate is consistent when Alice, the better player, has a higher rating than Bob. Here I marked in magenta the times when the system is inconsistent. So now we can examine the busiest figure we ever had. Again, 1 figure for each match length, and 4 rating differences between players, 25 Elo, 50, 100, and 200. Let's look at 3-point matches. The x-axis shows the player mean rating, the y-axis the consistency. The solid lines indicate V2 consistency, and the dot dash line shows FIRO, the wins-only system. So, for players 25 Elo points apart, FIRO consistency is about 60%. The weaker player will have a higher rating 40% of the time. The dotted line shows CZR. The dashed line is EZR. So V2 is better than FIRO over the whole range, typically doing better for higher rated players, but worse than CZR and EZR, between 10% to 4% worse for 50 and 100 points, the red and the green lines. In 5-point matches, V2 barely competes even with FIRO, and in 7 points, it seriously lags behind all of them. Only in 1-point matches, it is comparable to CZR and EZR. This is disappointing and alarming for V2, because those are the conservative K values. With reasonable K values, V2 struggles to keep up even with FIRO in 3 to 7-point matches. And now for my last point, balance. EZR and FIRO estimate the actual rating difference, but V2 and CZR, being hacks, can't. Both, it turns out, inflate the differences. Here's a figure for V2. So, for example, a 1900 playing 1-point matches against an 1800 will see 220 rating point difference, but only 120 when playing 7-point matches. The shorter the match, the larger the difference. The message is clear. Play 1-point matches if you want to inflate your rating, especially if you are a strong player. Because, in Galaxy, the poorer get poorer. Funnily enough, some users found it without extensive simulations. Brad Garner went from 1900 to 2100 in just 225 1-point matches. Interestingly, the same bias in favor of the stronger player is true in CZR, but the discrepancy between match lengths is smaller, a 3-to-2 ratio instead of almost 2-to-1 in our 100 Elo 3-pointers example. Time to wrap up. What have we learned? We now know what is needed to build a performance-assisted rating system, a model of the conditional probabilities, Alice's PR win rate when she wins the match and when she doesn't. Ignoring the dependency is not an option. You don't win a match by declaring yourself the better player. You have to play it well. And if you have a bad day, you will lose more. And when correctly accounting for this dependency, as EZR does, the system is balanced and has better stability and better consistency than anything else. And on the other side of the spectrum, we have V2, a hack that can't even outperform a simple but theoretically sound wins-only system. At any aspect, be it stability, consistency, and obviously balance. And if you can't model the PR, use a chess-like system, which also outperforms V2 and has constant stability and responsiveness across the Elo spectrum, and not this variable performance resulting from design flaws. I know these are harsh words, but that's what the data says. I'm sure some people would object and say it's irrelevant since I'm using ZR and not XG. And I can't base my views on bots, because people are different than computers. And say that without realizing the irony. PR is founded on bot judgment, so you can't suddenly exclude bots the moment it becomes inconvenient. Bots play backgammon, some at superhuman strength, some at human strength, and some at dismal. But just like PR, we can base the rating system on bots' judgments. Some humans will gain and some will lose, but as long as people play a variety of opponents, they will be, with enough data, graded correctly. And as for ZR versus XG, the model indeed is based on GNU-BG zero ply, because this is the only practical option. But here's a graph of several hundred ZRs from 3-point matches, analyzed also by GNU-BG 2 ply. And as you can see, they are in agreement. So the PR win rates by both should be very similar. And I hope most of you agree that both GNU-BG 2 ply and XG 3 ply would usually give the same verdict as to who won the PR. In short, I think the results I presented reflect V2 performance quite well, and are hugely disappointing and hurt the credibility of PR-assisted rating systems. I don't expect Galaxy to change anything, because users got addicted to large rewards from wins, and will be enraged if the ratings suddenly shrink to their true proportions. But calling the V2 PR system prestigious is just preposterous and even pretentious, and that's enough PR words for one day. So, until next time, precious pretty rollers, adio.